Alright guys, welcome back to another video. Today's Saturday, September 20th, 2025. It's currently the afternoon. Nice weather, kind of cloudy. Just decided to come right here by the beach. Let me go ahead and show you guys. Real nice weather, not too many people here. Just the usual suspects. People going into the water. I wanted to cover another topic today that I thought was very important for a lot of people to hear. There's a lot of people in the United States right now that have a completely paid off home. A lot of people that are older, they're retired, they live on a fixed income. And there's a lot of families out there as well that currently are either in a mortgage or they're getting close to paying off their house. And one of the things that I have noticed over the last couple of years is the increase in the amount of HOAs everywhere popping up. That every single community now, they pretty much have an HOA. And some of these fees, some of them, they're reasonable. Some of them are very, very high. We live in an area where the average HOA fee is probably somewhere between $500 to $1,000 a month. And some of these places, they definitely govern what you can and can't do to a very minute level. So today I wanted to go over the trials and tribulations of homeowners and what they go through with their HOAs. A lot of people think that by buying into a community that has an HOA, that their property values are going to hold, that their communities are going to increase in value, and that everything is perfect. But in reality, sometimes what ends up happening, these HOAs, they become your worst enemy. I've heard of situations, really bad situations, that homeowners go through when they live within an HOA. So today I'm going to share a couple stories of people that I know that have been threatened to be foreclosed on within an HOA. They are blocked from selling their homes until certain repairs are done. One of the things that's actually very common right now, especially in condominiums, are surprise bills that you get, these special assessments that you should all be aware of that can happen at any moment if you are part of an HOA. So again, like I said, when you move into an HOA, they want to paint it really rosy for you. They want to make you think that it's the best thing in the world, that you have security, that everything is going to be okay. You'll never run into any issues. Once you move into the HOA and as the months pass by, then that's when you start seeing the reality of what it's like to actually live within one of these communities. You have HOAs that will fine you for leaving out your trash cans too long after pickup. If your grass isn't green enough, they'll send you warnings. If your house isn't painted a certain color, or if you paint it the wrong shade, don't worry, you will get a fine or you will get several warnings. And even if you have certain curtains that you use that are visible on the street that they do not like, you will get fined. And for everything that you need to do that is actually on the outside of your home, you have to ask for permission. And it has to be approved by the board. You know, the worst part is this will not stop. This will keep going and going and going over the years. And eventually, the only way that you can get this to stop is by selling your house. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is when they have a house in a strict HOA, a lot of these places will not let you sell your home until they go in there and they check to make sure that the house looks okay for you to sell. So it's kind of like an inspection. They send someone out from the board to inspect it to make sure that everything looks fine and dandy before they allow for you to actually sell that property. So I have had this happen with several clients of mine where maybe they lived in the house for 15, 20 years. And a lot of these people, maybe they're in a senior community. So they have a tough time sometimes keeping up with the outside of the house. Or some of these people are in fixed incomes. So they don't have a lot of money to be able to make those repairs outside on a yearly basis. And so what ends up happening is a lot of deferred maintenance. What ends up happening too is, like I said, these people, they get into a contract to sell, and a lot of the times they can't even get that far. They have to get the HOA involved, pay them a fee to come out and inspect the property, and maybe they have a buyer lined up. Maybe the realtor already found someone that's interested in the property as is, but no, they want you to fix certain things. Like I said, sometimes they'll have the front gate that's faded that needs to be painted. Sometimes the stucco has cracks, needs to be repaired. Sometimes the landscaping, it looks worn, that needs to be replaced. It could be anything. It could be light fixtures. It could be a portion of the roof needs to be fixed. Anything that they deem inappropriate, they will go ahead and put a roadblock and make sure that they will not sign off on the sale of that property until that is corrected. And a lot of times what happens is a lot of these homeowners, they have to find contractors or people that are willing to get paid with the proceeds of the sale of the property because they cannot afford these repairs. I've seen these repairs run into the thousands of dollars to be able to completely bring the property up to snuff, to be able to have the HOA approve it. And not every contractor is willing to do that. And a lot of the times, if you run into a situation where you cannot find someone like that, then you have to get into debt to be able to bring it up to date. And you know, most of these repairs, they're not repairs that make the house unlivable. These are things that the HOA really puts a lot of control on, and it's either take it or leave it. So if you do decide to move into a community that has an HOA, make sure you find out how strict they are, because some of them can really put a damper in your plans to be able to sell your property. And imagine the stress that you as a homeowner have to go through. There's a lot of things that you have to go through when you sell a property. Maybe you already have a certain amount that you need from the proceeds of that sale to be able to put as a down payment for a different home. I have had different clients of mine where they really need every single dollar that they can get from the proceeds of their home, because maybe they want to move into a retirement community, or maybe they want to move closer to where their children live. And properties are not cheap. Some people are moving into areas that are more expensive, and this puts a damper in it. Also, you may have an interested buyer at the moment, and that person may get frustrated if you take too long to be able to bring the property up to date so you can eventually get the HOA to approve to sell it. These are things that can happen, especially right now. We're in a housing market that's not very hot. So if you have an HOA that's already putting you pressure to put more money into the property, it might not make sense for you to do it at the moment. If you are not in the position to sell, then you're probably better off holding on to the property as long as you can. And you know, the problem that happens too with HOAs is over the years, there's a lot of homeowners that sometimes they will get fines or penalties for certain things, and maybe they forget to pay them. And the HOA, they will not approve the sale of your property if those fines are not paid. So they can accumulate over time. I had a client several years ago that they would fine her on a weekly basis for not paying a penalty for having her trash cans out too long on the street. And sometimes that's not the client's fault. There's communities out there that are 55 and over that have people that live there that are partially or totally disabled. And sometimes it's very difficult for them to find help, to be able to help them out on mundane tasks like moving trash cans from the street to the driveway. Those little things can cause a lot of stress for homeowners as well. And so these are the problems that a lot of people are going through. They think that they are in a perfect subdivision, when in reality, a lot of these places, they just torment you with penalties and fines month after month for any little thing. And a lot of these places too, they will penalize you for going over the speed limit within the community as well. There's a community nearby where my office is at that they have very, very strict speed limits, and they have cameras as well. And these people make a killing on homeowners that go a couple miles over the speed limit. You'll be surprised how much money these HOAs get from all these monthly penalties. And it's all outlined on their financials. It's just amazing. I had one client several years ago that had moved into one of these HOAs, and she hired a moving company that had 2 different trucks that decided to move her furniture into the home. And both of those trucks did not stop completely on 2 different stops. So we're talking about 4 violations here. 2 right turns with 2 incomplete stops. And you had one of the securities within the HOA penalize both of those trucks. It was $800 for those penalties, $200 a penalty. And guess what? A lot of these penalties, usually, they don't issue them to the person that's driving. They don't issue them to the vendor. They issue them to the homeowner. So the homeowner was the one on the hook for these penalties. And the worst part is, they already had the payment information on file, so they just swiped the credit card. These things are just getting ridiculous. So what ended up happening, the homeowner ended up having to pay the $800 of penalties. That homeowner passed on the bill to the vendor. So the vendor made very little money for that trip. These are things that do happen. So if you are a vendor and you are in a situation where you are entering these HOAs, be very careful with the speed limits and the stops, because a lot of these communities, they will get you and they will fine you stiff penalties. Some of these penalties can range anywhere between $75 to $200. I've seen them in my area. Let me know if that is different in different states in the United States. I know when I was in Tennessee earlier this year, they are starting to build more communities with HOAs. And even in places like Alabama and other rural areas in the United States, HOAs are starting to become a lot more popular as people from states like California, Arizona, they start to move into these rural communities. A lot of these home builders are starting to impose HOAs in different parts of the United States. Okay, and here's another one for you guys. So like I said before, special assessments. That's actually a very big thing that's going on right now. It's actually spooking a lot of potential home buyers. I know I've watched several videos online about people in Florida having issues with HOA special assessments. So when you go ahead and purchase a property within an HOA, you usually think that as long as you pay your several $100s a month, that you will be A-okay and everything will flow along. The problem is that a lot of these complexes, they will have a situation where they will have special assessments. You'll have sometimes where you need to repair a roof, or you need to paint the entire complex, or maybe you need to fix certain parts of the common areas, community pools. There's different things that can impact the special assessments coming in. And sometimes what will happen is you'll have situations where these special assessments, they're not several $100s. They're several $1,000s per homeowner. And this is just a bill that just gets tacked along all of a sudden. And you as the homeowner are required to come up with that money immediately. within a certain period. And if you can't, then these HOAs, they eventually will put a lien on your property, and you will be responsible for that special assessment. And if you ever decide to sell your property again, these special assessments, they will be tacked on to the sale of the property. They will get paid at the end. And that will hurt your bottom line. If you ever decide to move out and go to a different property, that's less money in your pocket for the next move. And you know, a lot of these special assessments, usually you have to vote. But unfortunately, a lot of people that live within HOAs, they usually don't vote. They usually are not well aware of what's going on. That's why it's very important that if you are in a community with an HOA, try to be very careful and try to be on top of their financials, where the money's flowing, and try to see how you can find a way to make your own vote count. Because sometimes people, they're retired, maybe they don't have a lot of funds, and then they get hit with these special assessments they didn't even vote for. So that's why it's important that you keep track of that if you are part of an HOA. And you know, the HOAs, they are governed by people that live within that community. And a lot of them, you know, these people, sometimes they do come into a little bit of a power trip. They go ahead and they start enforcing certain things, or maybe there's certain people that, quote unquote, they get bullied on. So I have heard of situations where maybe they do give particular homeowners a hard time. Sometimes you just have to become good friends with these people at the board, because then maybe you'll get less hassle. But I do think that it's not easy dealing with board members, especially when they do have a power trip. It's very, very common for people to be in HOAs that they're full of corruption. I have heard of situations where there is corruption within an HOA. Maybe there's vendors that get paid, that they inflate their invoices, and the money is filtered out of the HOA into people's hands that are not supposed to have the money. That's why it's very important, like I said, if you are paying a certain amount of money monthly, you want to make sure that the money is flowing into the correct places and that the HOA is not overspending on certain categories. Because it could be that the money could be flowing into wrong hands, or maybe family members, board members are the ones getting the bids to be able to do certain jobs. That does happen a lot. I've seen also situations where there's been board members that have embezzled money. There's been situations where the money goes missing and there's no accountability of it as well. Those are things that can happen. Those are the trials and tribulations, and those are the risks that you take when you live in an HOA. That's the risk that you take, that this money could be embezzled by someone if the board members don't put enough care into what's going on. And the majority of people, unfortunately, they don't have time to keep track of that. And HOAs, they do have the power to be able to foreclose on your home, which is very hard to believe. I've heard of a lot of stories of people getting their houses nearly foreclosed on because they are behind on HOA fees. Now, to the HOA itself, the board members do have to go through several steps to be able to eventually get a house foreclosed on that's behind on their fees. But it can happen. It just depends on the court system, how long it takes. This could take several months or even more than a year to be able to make it happen. But if you are delinquent enough and it gets noticed amongst the board members, you best believe that they are going to start the paperwork to start the foreclosure process on your property. And it can happen. This is a reality, especially in a state like California. Obviously, different states have different rules, but it's just very unfortunate because there are a lot of people that do have their homes completely paid off. Maybe their property taxes and insurance are in good shape, but it just happens that maybe their HOA fees are just falling behind. And that could be the nail in the coffin. That could be what could get your property foreclosed on if you let enough of these assessments fall behind without paying them. And unfortunately, the courts, 9 times out of 10, they will go ahead and side with the HOA to be able to go ahead and foreclose on your property. It's very rare that they'll side with the homeowner as to whatever excuse they have as to why they are behind on their HOA fees. And obviously another thing that can happen is a lot of these neighbors, they can turn into enemies as well. I've seen it. I've lived in HOAs and I've seen it where maybe obviously you do have the board members that live in the community. Sometimes they have to make harsh decisions that can affect other neighbors. And so they become enemies because they go through these issues that maybe doesn't favor one of the homeowners, makes them do certain things, and they are just not happy. So a lot of the times what ends up happening too is a lot of people, they will end up moving out of the HOA. I've seen it happen where sometimes they will move out of the HOA, but they'll keep the property because they can't afford to sell it, and they will rent it out, but they just won't live in that HOA because they don't want to confront their neighbors. Or maybe people will even sell the property at a loss if it's needed to be able to get out of that community. So these are things that do happen. You can make enemies in an HOA, especially if you're part of a board or you make decisions that affect other homeowners in your community. So a lot of these things, even though living in an HOA has its positives, I think that if you do decide to eventually purchase a home within an HOA, one of the things that you do have to do is you have to take a look at their financials. You have to take a look at the reserve funds. You have to do some investigation on how healthy their financials are. You don't want to get into a community that hits you with a special assessment within the first year that you're in because you didn't do your due diligence on their financials. Or maybe you didn't do your due diligence on the life of certain things. Also, make sure you ask for resale requirements. What are the requirements? If you decide to sell tomorrow, are they going to put a big line of things that need to be done before you sell the property? Those are things that you just have to ask. You have to budget for assessments because those things can happen. So don't think that just because you have enough money to pay the HOA fees, you'll be okay. There will come a time where you might get hit by a special assessment. So just make sure you budget for that as well. And also make sure that you do get involved within your HOA. Make sure that you at least attend the meetings if you are not going to be part of the board. So at least you can hear what's going on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis. Depends on how often they decide to run these meetings. And I think it's very important for you to know the bylaws of the HOA, go through them, and also know your state laws in case at one point you need to defend yourself. You know what's going on. That way you don't get bamboozled. And that way you know what steps to take if they try to pull a fast one on you. Those are just little tips that I'm giving you in case you do decide to eventually buy a home within an HOA, because like I said, that's a growing trend right now. A lot of homes do require for you to be able to pay an HOA fee monthly if you want to live in a certain community. That's just another reminder of the trials and tribulations that people are going through right now in the United States. Let me know down below if you have any nightmare stories about an HOA. Maybe you lived in one, or maybe you are living in one. I would like to know your stories. I know there's people out there that have some wild stories. I personally have seen friends and family go through different things with HOAs, and clients as well. I always hear little stories about things happening. And so I think it's very important for us to be able to share these stories with people so that other people can learn. Maybe there's things that you have done to be able to avoid certain things. Please let me know in the comments below. Like I said, I would like to hear that. I'm gonna go ahead and continue to enjoy my day today. It's very, very nice weather. Love getting this ocean breeze right now. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't had a chance to. It's totally free. And make sure you hit that notification button, bell notification button. That way, as soon as my videos come out, you get notified. I know YouTube lately has been a little weird. I feel like they're not notifying a lot of people that my videos are out. So not many people are actually viewing videos lately. But if you had a chance, go ahead and look through the history of videos. I've released a lot of good content. If you're interested in some of the topics, go ahead and view them. I'll continue to provide you guys good content that I think will make you guys a better person. Hopefully I'm educating you guys one video at a time, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.